This episode of the Alpha Nerds podcast brought to you by Sponge. Whether it's a food, a verb, or your mom, it's Sponge.
Welcome to the Alpha Nerds podcast, the podcast that's currently checked out at your local library. I'm Bart.
And I'm Pete.
And every week we talk about a TV show or movie that has to do with one letter of the alphabet, and this week's is Q.
Q?
Quiet, quintessence, Quilliam.
Quilliam.
Quillman. The man with the nib. As we do every week, we have 5 honorable mentions. These are topics that we decided not to do or didn't quite make the cut or what have you, that aren't our subject. So, Pete, why don't you actually kick us off for your 5?
All right. Just want to say it was very difficult finding 6 total subjects to discuss for this letter because Q is not a very well-used letter, at least for the first thing. Anyway.
Yeah.
So, first off, I got Quest for Camelot, that cartoon movie with the two-headed dragon that sings the whole thing about, like, wanting to be separate.
Yeah, and then once they are separate, they immediately, like, backsies on that, and they're like, oh, I want to be together, though, because we've learned to develop. No! You had your wish.
Pretty much, yeah. And, honestly,
Actually
I don't remember much from that movie besides the fact that they combined a chicken with an axe, and I think they named him Axebeak.
I don't remember that. I do. So it's made by Warner Brothers Animation, which is technically the same studio that did Lego Movie, Lego Batman.
Such a long way they've come.
Yeah.
All right. So after that, I got Peter Quill, also known as Star-Lord.
Who calls him Star-Lord?
Star-Lord calls him Star-Lord.
Yes, it does.
So
from the hugely successful Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yes. And just a really fun character. I love how Chris Pratt portrays him.
Yeah, he has tons of fun. Everybody in the movie seems like they had a bunch of fun making it.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, so, fun fact about that movie, it came out as the same summer as Man of Steel. So I want you to go back in time, I want you to tell past self, trust me on this, you're going to watch a Superman movie, and it's not going to be as good as the movie that has the tree and talking squirrel.
Raccoon. But, yeah.
What? Yeah. It made more money, too. That's a ridiculous thing. Like, yeah, the most successful movie wasn't the Superman movie. It was the Guardians movie.
I would honestly just tell my past self, just like, you know what, skip Man of Steel because you're just going to be yelling at the screen for all the stupid decisions they made in the plot.
Okay, thing I don't like about it. So there's a line where it's taken from All-Star Superman, and it's they may stumble and fall, but soon they will join you in the sun. And it's taken from All-Star Superman, where Superman went into the sun and got cancer.
Yeah.
That's slowly killing him.
Yeah.
So it's one of those, I don't want them to join me in the sun. I'm dying because of the sun. Me and the sun aren't on the best of terms. If I could see the sun right now, I'd punch him in the face.
Yep.
But enough about complaining about DC movies. We'll be here forever.
Yes. So after that, I got Johnny Quest. Yeah. I remember watching that show when I was probably, I want to say 10, and it was like one of those early morning WB shows, like before school. So that was pretty fun.
The best use of Johnny Quest ever has been the first episode of Harvey Birdman, Attorney at Law.
Yes.
Where Race Bannon's going out for custody of the children.
Yeah.
And second best use is Race Bannon being used as a stand-in for Michael Pence. Those memes that came out right after the election.
Yes. Oh my god. So great.
Those ones are awesome.
Let's see. After that, I got Quail Man.
Yeah.
Anybody who watched Nickelodeon in the 90s remembers Doug, and therefore Quail Man. I don't know what his superpowers were.
Did he have them?
Like,
Because there was the one where Skeeter had his superhero, and his superhero just had all the powers. And Doug was like, "Oh man."
Yeah, I just remember that like whistle they did, just the, and I remember like he was trying to like, okay, he went a little nuts when Roger Klotz challenged him to a fight, and then he's like trying to be Quail Man like in real life, and he's just like looking at Roger like glaring into his eyes going, patience, intelligence, speed. And I'm like, quails don't have any of those.
No, not really, no.
Like, just none. Like, first of all, like...
Run away from dogs.
Yeah.
Run away from dogs.
Pretty much. Run away from anybody hunting in those presidential hunting grounds, unless Dick Cheney's there, in which case, you know, you're only in trouble if you're his friend's face.
Okay, that was a long time ago. Like, that's a heck of a callback.
It's not the most timely reference, but it's not my fault more famous people aren't shooting their friends in the face.
It doesn't happen that often. But, like, you want to talk about, like, a weird situation that happened. We had a vice president shoot a man in the face and get away with it, and the guy who got shot in the face actually apologized.
Yeah.
For the hassle being shot in the face caused. You know when the last time a vice president shot a man in the face? He had a musical written after him. Boom, I am timely.
Yes. Okay.
My reference game is strong.
And my final one is The Question.
Nice.
The DC Comics hero who just... I relate to on such a personal level, just because he is... He's a paranoid, pretty much lunatic.
Well, back in the, like, 80s and, like, 70s, he was just, like... or no, he wasn't around in the 70s and 80s, because...
no, because he was supposed to be introduced, like... It was the time he was supposed to be introduced when we got Watchmen. And instead of The Question, we got Rorschach.
So when he was back in the Charleston comics, he was just like all-American, like, quick, let's get them, like that kind of thing. And then when they made Justice League, they basically just made him Rorschach again, which is the best version of the character and has just become the version of the character we see now.
It really is good. And it in Justice League Unlimited, he really gets a chance to shine. And just the way he does his job, sort of without the Justice League's go ahead. Like, he's basically like, you know what, I'm just gonna take the data myself. I don't care if it's illegal, I'm just gonna take it.
Yeah. Again, like Rorschach. But that one, he was the main, like, connecting thread throughout all the plot lines in that last half of that season.
Pretty much, yeah.
Because, like, Superman and Batman and everybody, like, were like, something's up. And then they stopped. And he was the only one who's like, well, let's figure this out. Like, why not?
Yeah. And he's one of the few people that tried to kill Lex Luthor. Like, actually murder him.
Did he?
Yeah. When he realized that Lex Luthor was the one who would eventually kill the Flash... He was like, okay, I have to stop this Justice Lord's future from happening. The only way I can do that is to stop the Flash from getting murdered. And the one who murders him was Lex Luthor. So I'll just murder Lex Luthor. And,
nice.
You know, he basically, like, explains to him, it's like, listen, I'm a well-established lunatic. The Justice League will be fine if I just, you know, snap. Yeah. Like, it's better me than, you know, Superman come in and, like, tarnish his good name. So, I'm just gonna kill you here and go into a loony bin for the rest of my life. Bye-sies!
Yeah, I mean, clearly it doesn't say bye-sies, or at least not in that tone. It's more like, bye-sies.
Pretty much. So, yeah, that's my 5. Bart, what do you got?
Sweet. So the first one I'm gonna do is Quentin Tarantino. Only director, I think. This name starts with a Q.
Maybe.
The most like that man. Okay, so he took the ultra violence that was in the new Hollywood movies, added the ultra sweariness that I think he invented Like, I don't think it existed. I think Reservoir Dogs is actually before Casino. Oh, no, because he wrote True Romance, and it was in that.
Mm.
That crazy, that crazy movie. And he's just been working, like, he started out working at a video store, like, just watching movies, and then started writing scripts, and then the scripts got picked up, and he was a friend of, I think, B. Arthur's. He was definitely in an episode of Golden Girls. I remember that picture.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But,
that's a weird connection.
Now he's making buckets of money.
Yeah. He's also absolutely crazy.
Yeah, he's gone off the deep end as deep as it gets.
Yeah. Like, the strongly proclaimed foot fetish is, like, one thing. But, like, he's just off the rails.
Yeah, he's kind of taken, like, why? Why can't I say whatever I want? I mean, you can. You really shouldn't, but you can.
You can, but you're gonna be held responsible.
Yeah. Getting away from that and to better, nicer people, QI, which is a British panel/trivia show, which I wish they would do here more often. Basically, you have groups of like 2 people or 3 people who are on a team just answering trivia questions. You get a bunch of comedians, so it stays lively. QI is actually, it's been running for years, and it's hosted by Stephen Fry. I think it's still hosted by Stephen Fry, too.
Nice.
But yeah, that's a really good show.
Right on.
And keeping up with quiz shows is, well, Quiz Show, the movie that came out in the mid-90s about a guy who cheated at the quiz shows in the late 1950s, early 1960s, when quiz shows were enormous and huge.
Nice. Is this the same guy who figured out how to cheat that one thing with the no whammies?
Oh, no, this isn't the guy from Whammy. This was
that show actually called Whammy? I thought it was something different.
No, it was Press Your Luck.
Oh, right. Okay.
The reboot was called Whammy. But they, Quiz Show was about a producer who was feeding a college professor questions and answers so that he could beat a like guy who had been on the show for forever who was also getting questions and just like tarnishing his name. It's Ray Fiennes, John. Gosh, he's the guy who plays. Dang it. Anyways, Ray Fiennes, really good movie, is directed by Robert Redford. Fantastic.
Nice.
Gosh, what is that guy's name? John Turturro. Gosh. Hold that one out of my butt. Next movie is Quigley Down Under. Pete, what do you know about Quigley Down Under?
It takes place in Australia.
Yeah, it does.
And there's a guy named Quigley. And that's
so
where
it's
he
basically, is. Yeah. So the lead character is played by Tom Selleck. Your secondary character, or your main villain, is played by Alan Rickman. It was actually filmed in Alice Springs, and for the listeners, I actually used to live in Alice Springs. So the main Italian restaurant had like pictures of them that were signed, which is really weird out there because you're like, there is nothing for a day and a half in any direction.
Yeah.
Here's a signed picture of Alan Rickman just sitting here. How did this get here? Like, you're really in Mad Max territory out there. Like, legit Mad Max territory. Like, they didn't film it out there. They filmed on the outskirts of Sydney. But trust me, nothing changes between the edge of Sydney and Alice Springs.
Terrifying.
Yeah. If there's the hole in the ozone, it is parked right above that section of the planet. That's why everything in that middle of Australia is dead, because there's just a big hole burning.
Well, not everything, because there's also all the things that will kill you.
Oh, yeah. We're not going to talk
Only
about that.
Only death lives in Australia.
Yes. And my last one is Quantum Conundrum, which is a very, very, very good video game. A little indie game that came out a few years ago. I think like 5-6 years ago now. But the premise is it's made by one of the girls, she's older than I am, one of the women who worked on the Portal team, the original concept for that, who worked at Valve and then left. And now it's basically the same idea as what they later did with Portal, with the goops that you could use, where it's you have to pick up items to get to the objective, but you flip through dimensions. So one dimension, everything's soft and fluffy, so you can pick up a box, carry it, set it down, turn back to the normal dimension, and climb on it. One dimension, everything's super heavy, so you can use that to press down switches, break through grates, stuff like that. One dimension, everything's like anti-grav and like floaty, so you use that to get across gaps. And one, I think, is the time stopper?
I think so.
I think that's time stopper.
Or at least the slow time.
Yeah. But really good puzzle game. If you dug Portal, just give this a shot, because there's no reason not to.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. And that is it. That is my 5 for this week. So, Pete, we are about on time.
For once.
Why don't you get us started? Yeah. Why don't you get us started with yours?
Okay, so my topic this week is a webcomic called Questionable Content.
No, it's good that you led with it's a webcomic first.
Yeah. I missed a perfect opportunity for a joke. My topic is questionable content.
Pete, no porn! That was Pete! We're after that!
For listeners, a little bit of behind-the-scenes trivia. When we were doing H, I had Bart thinking I was going to do hentai. The whole history of it. And, oh, man, that was a good time.
It's a pretty deep well.
Okay, so, webcomic, questionable content, created by this guy named Jeff Jacks, even though his name looks like it should be pronounced Jacques, but, he's not French. His name is French.
Isn't he Canadian?
He moved to Canada, but he's American.
Oh, weird.
Yeah. He started in Northampton, Massachusetts. He was working as a telephone operator for a newspaper. That gives you some, that gives you some scope as to how long ago this was.
Oh, yeah. Just the fun, breakneck world of a telephone operator for a newspaper in New Hampton.
Well, Northampton.
Northampton. Yeah. My gosh. What I said was ridiculous and could never exist in this
New
universe.
Hampton.
Not this universe that has a South Boston. And a Paris, Texas.
Oh, man. Intercourse, Pennsylvania.
Celebration, Florida.
Off topic. Okay. So, the comic started off as sort of a slice of life, just a little episodic. It takes place in a world where the singularity has basically happened. So we've got AIs in little robot forms that just kind of live among people. Sometimes, most of the time, they just kind of live as a companion. So it's kind of it's kind of a middle ground between getting a dog and having a baby, getting an AI.
Yeah, and that is glazed over in the future episodes of the series. It's just we have robots. You don't really, they never mention it's so weird you have a robot. No, it's just hey, pint size.
It's just so commonplace that, people are just yeah, okay. Yeah. So, off the bat, it starts off with a lot of references to indie music, which went right over my head when I was reading it, because I don't listen to indie music very much, and every time they were talking shit about one band or another, it's well, I guess that's a joke for someone. So
yeah, you probably wouldn't know it unless you were familiar with the music scene of Southampton.
Yeah. This is back when the term hipsters wasn't derogatory.
Yeah.
This was back when...
Man, remember those halcyon days of 2003?
2004, I think. But anyway, so the comic started in 2003. In 2004, Jeff left his day job to do Monday through Friday updates. So this is his main source of income. So he is one of the few people who's been able to make a webcomic successful enough to live off of.
Yeah, I think the other ones are Zach Weinersmith, XKCD guy, Kate Beaton. And I think that's it. It's a very short list. The dude from Homestuck.
Yeah, but, that's Homestuck. We don't talk about Homestuck.
Not on this podcast.
So, what I want to really focus on when I'm talking about this comic is basically how it evolved into sort of an example of relationships, and also like things such as sexual identity or sexual preferences and things like that, like sort of modern topics to both educate and also, faithfully portray people who aren't really portrayed in the media.
Yeah, I get that.
So, beginning, we have Martin, who is like your stereotypical indie kid, super skinny, black hair, lanky looking.
Ooh, is he our standard webcomic protagonist?
Yes, he is a standard webcomic protagonist.
Ooh, I have one of those. On my webcomic I haven't written in years. So,
yeah. And it starts with him and his friend Steve. Steve is cool. He's kind of a bro. Like, he's a little bit of the irritating sort of bro, but, he's a good friend through the comic. So it's cool. Whatever. Martin meets this girl, Faye, and basically through a series of increasingly unlikely events, they end up living together because she burned her apartment down when she was making toast.
Okay.
And
I'm not
they basically live together for... Yeah, they are still living together 14 years later into the time, real time wise, not comic time.
Is it at a different point? It's just with us, right?
Basically. I think as far as time in the comic has passed, it's more than two, it's between 2 and 4 years, I want to say.
Okay.
But anyway, so through the first few hundred by the way, spoiler alert for some plot points, but at this point they're so old that it's in the grand scheme of the comic, they're almost inconsequential.
Yeah, most people aren't going to go back and read the old ones. Like, there's very few comics that I've read beginning to end that have been like serialized like this. It's usually like the comedy ones where I need like another little giggle fix.
Yeah. So
he's upset. He's upset. He's upset.
So Martin and Faye for the first 500 strips, and I'm not being facetious, it's actually like 500 when they actually like bring it up. We have to deal with this whole will they or won't they thing. And they've got like this sort of like unspoken bond between them, and it's like, oh, are they gonna get together? Are they gonna fuck? And it's like, no, they're not. And I'm glad that Jeff resolved that instead of just keeping people on the hook for however long, like so many other things do, where it's like, oh, will they, won't they? And it's like, oh, god damn it, friends.
Well, he just traded it for another hook.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
It's one of those newer, prettier girl comes in.
So, then we have Dora, who is Faye's boss at the coffee shop where she works. And
hipster coffee shop.
Yep, and it's actually called Coffee of Doom, which is pretty cool. Anyway,
I'd like to believe that this was inspired by like Sabrina the Teenage Witch and Friends. Gosh, what's another show where somebody worked at a coffee shop? They usually worked at diners, like Roseanne or
something like that.
Alice, remember Alice?
Oh god,
kiss my grits.
Oh man. Okay, so Martin and Dora get together, and for a long time it's like really good. Although Dora has like these deep-seated insecurities, which are constantly like throwing monkey wrenches into the relationship. But
cue the sex music from Bob's Burgers.
Anyway, so they start a relationship, and of course Faye is upset because Dora basically makes a move on Martin like 2 days after she explains why she can't be in a relationship with him. The characters in this comic are actually very deeply written, and they each have like their own motivations, their own like sort of backstories and things like that. They have their own personal histories, which makes them really, really relatable. And sometimes the histories are more tragic than others. Faye's is ridiculous, like, whew, damn.
I have not read that much of the comic. I have like a light sprinkling of this comic knowledge.
Okay, so
I don't need to hear the backstory because that is two major spoilers and would take up too much time.
But yeah, Faye's backstory is unbelievably tragic. Okay. So, moving on, after Martin and Dora kind of split up, we have Claire and her twin brother Clinton, and these are both like, okay, you know those redheads where you're almost positive that their hair color comes from a bottle, but that's actually their regular color. These are those twins.
Okay,
but they're both awesome. Clinton actually has a robot hand because he held a firework too long as a little kid. So, and then they actually bring that up where it's like, that just goes to show that, you shouldn't hold on to fireworks. It's like, I don't know. I mean, from where I sit, it basically just says, hold on to fireworks, and then you'll get a cool robot hand.
Yeah, that's true.
And he actually, he's able to control his hand when it's detached, which is really cool.
Oh,
although, it's just, sort of the little skitter around sort of thing from the Addams Family.
Yeah, the thing. I was about to say.
So, that's pretty cool. And speaking of the inclusiveness of this comic, Claire is actually trans. And she basically sort of confides this in Martin during one of the story arcs. And it's really, really nice how they portray her. They don't make being trans centrifugal to it. Is that the right word? Centrific to her character?
Central to the character.
It focuses more on Claire as a person and not just being trans. Although they do call attention to the difficulty she does face being trans. So, it's there's a lot of really complicated issues that get addressed in this comic. And that is actually really admirable. Because, when you're just doing a comic, you can just keep it lighthearted and, superficial and fun and goofy. It takes it takes a lot of thought and a lot of care to address something complicated like social issues and things like that in a way that portrays it logically.
I disagree, kind of. Well, not that it takes more effort, just it's a lot easier to say, okay, we're going to do this arc than it is to just sit down and be like, okay, what kind of joke do I have to make today? Especially when he's kind of had his arc of just we're going to have definitive arcs with definitive characters and stuff like that.
I suppose so, but either way. Then we've also got Marigold, who is a almost stereotypical introverted video game nerd.
Guess who has acne?
Yeah. And when she's first introduced, she's basically the rock bottom image of the introverted gamer. So, her room is a mess. She's basically living in absolute squalor. Well, in the way that, say you've sequestered yourself to one room and you haven't taken the trash out, that kind of squalor, not actual squalor, like living in a cardboard box.
Yeah.
But then she ends up meeting a character that was introduced much earlier into the series named Hannelore. Now, she is a really interesting character all by herself, and she's kind of like a cocktail of a lot of different psychological issues. Being OCD, and she's like super clean, like that's the severity of her OCD. Like, she cleans everything to a point of almost rubbing the color off of stuff. Like, everything has to be clean and sterile. And it's really interesting to see her character development through the later comics, where she's actually learning to deal with things like human interaction, physical contact, and just being a functional human being. But when she first meets Marigold, she basically enters in a hazmat suit, and she just does the whole, like, Terminator entrance. Just, my name is Hannelore Ellicott Chatham. I end messes! So she and Hannelore and Marigold begin a really nice relationship. Well, not relationship, but, like, friendship relationship. And it is probably one of the more endearing mainstays of the comic. It's really nice to see them, like, together and, just being friends. Let's see. Going into the artificial intelligence part of this webcomic, there's a good number of AI characters. First off, we get introduced to in the very first comic is Martin's AI roommate / companion, whatever. His name is Pint Size, and he is just... It kills me to say it, but he's more vulgar than I am.
Yeah. Well, he serves the same role that the Cactus does in...
Girls with Slingshots.
Yeah.
So, yeah. It's... He's Pedro. Basically...
Pedro.
I think... No, Mick Pedro.
Mick Pedro,
yeah,
that's right.
He's Scottish. He's a Scottish cactus. God damn it.
Welcome to the internet.
Yep. So, anyway, Pint Size's whole thing is, like, ending comics on a just LOL so random sort of joke. And it's usually pretty well placed. Like, it's... There's one part where he's in a war with a Roomba. And that's legitimately really funny to watch. Then we've got Winslow, who is Hannelore's AI companion, and he's a Macintosh companion. So, like, they kind of do, like, a little bit of satire, like, Pint Size is supposed to be a PC, Winslow is supposed to be a Mac, and blah, blah, blah. Marigold has this other companion who is a sort of... what was it? She was
Chibi anime character?
Yeah, she was called a chibi anime, like, prototype character, and her name is Momo, and she's fucking adorable.
But then...
we actually see how some AIs are able to, like, get new bodies, so to speak. Because, it's basically like their mind is its own self-contained computer program. So, they're able to basically download their consciousness into another body. And Momo basically wanted to, be like a full-size person.
Be a real boy!
So, yeah, that was an interesting story arc when she was getting her, like, full-size AI body, or chassis, I guess I should say. Winslow also...
Why not just say body? It is a body.
Yeah, well, they call them chassis in the comic.
We need to get our word right.
Winslow ends up getting one of his own as well, and it's adorable and pink.
Because he looked like a iPod, and that died. Again, made in 2003. iPod's huge. That died in 2008.
Yeah.
When the iPhone... 2008 or 2007? It's 2007, I think. One of the two. Doesn't matter.
So, we start getting introduced to more and more, like, complex AI characters down the line. At one point, there's a story arc where they go to see Hannahlore's father, who runs a space station, and the station has its own AI named Station. And it's supposed...
And that was a weird one, because they brought back the sci-fi stuff really heavy, really fast.
They really did. And it's really interesting how they did it. And it's actually there we get to learn Hannahlore's backstory, and hers is, like, almost heartbreaking. Like, damn. Like, some of these characters get really heavy really fast, and sometimes you're not ready for it. But I think that's one of the things that makes this comic as good as it is.
Okay.
Because, sometimes shit is just heavy, and you gotta deal with it. Okay, I'm running out of time, so I gotta wrap this up.
Yeah.
So we get introduced to 3 more AIs that are like almost mainstay characters. One of them leaves. Bubbles, who is an ex-military Valkyrie class AI, and you're probably imagining exactly what she looks like. Big, beefy, muscular, kind of has that don't fuck with me vibe going about her. And then we've got Corpse Witch, who is sort of the brains behind a AI robot fighting ring sort of thing. Like, semi-illegal, because AIs like fight each other and people place bets, but since all the AIs volunteer to fight, it's like it becomes illegal just because it's gambling in Massachusetts. So, and we've also got May, who starts off as you're sounding like Chamberlain from Dark Crystal.
I'm just making whale noises.
So, then we've got May, who used to be in Robot Jail. Robot Jail is a thing because she tried to steal enough money to buy a fighter jet so that she could be a fighter jet. And she... yeah. So, she is currently, like, on parole from Robot Jail. Like, she's basically done her time and she's reformed and everything like that. She is pretty vulgar as well. Like, it's hilarious. And she becomes like Momo's sort of best friend. And it's really interesting. They got like a whole Odd Couple vibe going about them. But, they genuinely do care about each other. So it's really nice to see.
Okay.
And finally, there are filler comics. Because Jeff, like... Get out of here, whale. There are filler comics.
Oh, my time now, boy.
Because, like any person who works, sometimes you need a little bit of downtime. So, enter filler comics. Things like Yelling Bird, which is a super vulgar, it's a bird that just yells. And... honestly, it's pretty funny, but when you're waiting for a story arc to wrap up, and then you get Yelling Bird, you get kind of pissed off. After Yelling Bird, we got Sweet Tits, who is a filler character, and she just got introduced because it's like, I don't know what I'm doing here. Bird just shooed me out here and said, it's your show now, Sweet Tits. Sweet Tits. I guess that's my name. And then the comic just ended there. And they have, like, more comics later on, but it's pretty funny. And then we have the Orb of Shame, who just floats around reminding people of shameful things that they've done, and it's really funny.
I don't remember well, I've never read any of the Orb of Shame ones.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's about it. There's honestly so much more to this comic than I've just discussed. I mean, obviously, because there's
so. It's been going on for
14
years.
So, you know, I wish there was enough time for me to discuss everything about this, but sadly there's not.
Make a new podcast.
Yeah. So, that's about it for me. Bart, what's your subject this week?
Could you imagine, like, the filler episodes of that podcast? You just have, like, a yelling bird and just be like, okay, so, this week, we got a yelling bird. Well, if you put out episodes on it. But we're not talking about that. We have to talk about things that start with Q. And, my talk for this week is Quantum Leap.
Nice!
Q music. Quantum Leap started in 1989. It's a really good show. It was created by Donald Belisario, who also made Jag. He made Magnum P.I., he made the NCIS, and he made the greatest show of all time, Airwolf. Shout out to you, Ernie Klein. Stars Scott Bakula and Dean Stockwell. They parodied it in Family Guy. I think they did a Simpsons parody. I can't remember.
Probably.
But it's weird to think this started the same year as The Simpsons. And The Simpsons is still going.
Yeah, kind of. It is weird.
But yeah, like, I really like the show. It's good, like, 1980s, 1990s, just like, sort of an adventure show. So, the beginning of every episode from, like, third season on, you get the following intro.
Theorizing that one could time travel within his own lifetime, Dr. Sam Beckett stepped into the Quantum Leap accelerator and vanished. He awoke to find himself trapped in the past, facing mirror images that were not his own, and driven by an unknown force to change history for the better. His only guide on this journey is Al, an observer from his own time, who appears in the form of a hologram that only Sam can see and hear. And so Dr. Beckett finds himself leaping from life to life, striving to put right what once went wrong, and hoping each time that his next leap will be the leap home.
And that's the show. That's your basic premise. Yep. That's everything you need to know about the show. Like, because the, like, cold opens are always, like, you see, like, a, like, split-second clip of the last episode, which is him, like, kissing a girl or sitting down in a chair or something. The big, like, blue effects, and then he's, like, a new body, and then the blue effects on that, and he's, like, driving a car being chased by the cops, and he's just, like, looks in the mirror, and he's, like, got an eye patch on and, like, cigarettes sticking out of his mouth. He's like, oh, boy.
Oh, boy.
And it's always, like, there was one time where he wakes up in an alleyway in the middle of, like, a fist fight, and he gets knocked on the ground, and this dude goes running past him, like, will you get up off the ground? And he, like, looks into a trash can lid that's next to him, and he's dressed like a woman. Like, he's clearly a man dressed like a woman, because he was a cop doing a sting, and he's like, oh, boy. And oh, boy is, like, the catchphrase for that show, and it's great. But it's a really good show. Like, it is good, honest, fun, adventure-y television. When I watched it when I was a kid, I watched it a lot with my mom. And I think everybody watched it with their mom.
Yep.
Because for some reason, I think moms just, like, really like this show. Because
I think moms just really like Scott Bakula.
Maybe moms like Scott Bakula. I don't know. I like Scott Bakula. He doesn't seem like he's a bad guy.
Yeah, he seems like a good guy, but I think moms like Scott Bakula in a different way.
He was actually on the cover of Playgirl once.
Damn!
You can look up the picture. It's like, it's one of those, like, man, the 90s was a different time. But I actually saw him once at, he was doing a panel at Comic-Con for a show he's making called Men of a Certain Age. with Ray Romano and, gosh, I can't remember last guy. And anybody who would like go up to the microphone and talk about Quantum Leap would say, I watch it a lot with my mom. I don't know why, like, it was like, it fit that vibe. One explanation that I think he gave or somebody else gave in an interview I read is you could watch it with your grandma or your grandpa because it went back to like 1940s, 1950s, and you'd be like, hey, I remember having that car, or I remember driving one of those, or somebody down the road from me had that, or I had that hat, something like that. So your premise of the show, Sam, like it's already been explained in the intro, but whenever he looks into a mirror, it's not his face. It's always somebody else. It's always whoever he's leaped into. And the rules behind the time travel are really weird. So he jumps into the Quantum Leap accelerator. He can only go within his lifetime. Like, whenever he's born, whenever he dies. So he can't go past, like, 1947 or something like that. And it can't go after, something else. Like, he only goes into the future, like, twice. Because they're like, let's not push this thing too far. Because I think it was one of those shows that was made to use extra costumes that a studio has.
Yeah.
I think it was one of those.
Okay.
Because, like, I could see Star Trek being pitched as that. Because, like, early Star Treks take place in, like, castle sets and have people dressed up like mobsters and Nazis. I think it was designed to just use extra costumes and be like, well, we can go anywhere. We can do anything. like Doctor Who. Like,
yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, we can do anything. We can go anywhere. So you don't have to make new costumes. We'll just use it from this other show. Like, think of all the times Doctor Who's gone back to Victorian England. They definitely got deals on the costumes when they were going back to Victorian England.
Yep.
Yeah. So we have Sam, who's actually jumping from person to person. You have Al, who's the hologram that only he can see. There's one episode where he actually does, like, there's like bits throughout episodes where he can actually interact with somebody, but it's only like to hear a voice, that kind of thing. And Al has that, like, he's supposed to be a Navy admiral, but he has the hint of that, like, sleazy 1950s leisure suit wearing guy from, like, the 90s.
Ah, jeez.
Like, remember Buster Goes to Hollywood and, the, like, Spider from Cool World? Like, that kind of, yeah, baby. Like, he has hints of that.
Ugh.
And he's the only person that you can see, and he has this computer called Ziggy that's like this little handheld thing that makes all these, like, beeps and warp.
Ziggy.
Sam, Ziggy says you gotta get the girl to date you before you can leap out of here. And Dean Stockwell did an amazing job. Like, it's one of those shows that, again, it had to be really fun.
Yeah.
Because you gotta, like, wear, like, because even he would, like, wear the 1950s suits so Sam wouldn't feel out of place sometimes. I had it in my closet. Wanted to test it out. That kind of thing. But for all the mirror tricks, so back when they did the first show, there's one episode where he's sitting at the counter of a restaurant, and then he looks in the mirror that's behind the bartender, and he sees that he's a black man in a white restaurant in, like, the 1960s, or I think it's early 60s. So what they did was they constructed a duplicate restaurant on the back half of that one, staffed with more extras, and an extra for the bartender who looks similar enough to stand behind the bartender with the other guy across from him. So there was all these ridiculous sets that they had to make just to get these, like, few shots.
Damn.
And eventually through use of green screening and, like, other, like, mirror effects, they could get, like, those shots. One of my favorite episodes is actually, I call it the Nam episode, but it's not really the Nam episode. Because there's actually an episode where he goes to Vietnam and he saves his girlfriend's brother, I think. There's one really weird one where he goes back to this woman he knew when he was in college. And he's having to, like, save her life, and he saves her life, and they both, like, fall madly in love. And then her husband walks in, and it's the dude who ran the Quantum Leap Project, and he's like, Professor, it's me! It's Sam! The Quantum Leap Project works! It actually works! And then warps right back out.
Bummer.
Yeah. So it's like, I don't get the girl, and now I'm in this kid's high school room. Oh, man.
Oh, damn.
Pop quiz hotshot. What character did he leap into in Family Guy?
Well, there were a couple instances where he leapt in Family Guy.
What was the first one?
That was Neil.
Yes, it was.
Neil Goldman. Just, why haven't I left yet? Ziggy says you can't leap until she loves you back.
And it was like that. Like, Ziggy had a guess on what it was that Sam had to do that episode. So there's one where he goes back to in the normal time period, the funding for the project's going to get cut. And he leapt back to, or he leapt back to 1961, right before Kennedy got shot, the day before Kennedy got shot. And so Al's trying to convince him, you gotta stop Kennedy from getting killed. You gotta stop this. And he's like, are you sure? I'm nowhere near, Washington, D.C. Are you sure that's what I'm supposed to be doing? He's like, yeah, that's what Ziggy says. So he actually, saves, there was this girl on the train that he's on that's getting, hunted by mobsters, and he, fights them off and, saves her life, and she's like, yeah, I'm gonna do all this, I'm gonna change the world, and I'm gonna go back to law school. Cut back to the future, the head of the panel of judges that was going over the financing for the project is now her grown up, having become a judge, who then grants the project, whatever they want. Because he has zero control over where he goes. He just goes to the next one.
Yep.
And they used to be able to track it and predict where he was going to go, and then that broke down, and they were thinking that God was just kind of shuffling him around. Yeah, they actually say that. He's like, I think somebody up there is doing it. Anyways, we're going to go to the Nam episode. So Sam jumps into a cop in San Diego, California.
Woo!
Yeah.
I'm in San Diego, by the way. So, yeah.
Yeah. We have a lot of love for San Diego here. So it's the, middle of the Vietnam War, and it has just some of the best scenes. So, Al tells him, you have to find this woman, you have to tell her that her husband's still alive. He's like, are you sure? And he's like, yeah, you gotta go. So, it's Al's wife. Al was a POW in Vietnam, and when his wife thought he was dead, she just, got married to somebody else. He's like, you can't let these two people, meet. You can't let them get married. But it actually wasn't that. It was something else. So there's a part where he's undercover, and he's wearing a ridiculous hippie wig and, the mustache, and he's on the college campus, and then somebody, steals something, and he has to chase him down. There's an excellent shot of his wife, who was a Navy nurse, standing at, Seaport Village, because I recognized the brick wall. I was like, oh, I know where that is.
Ah, nice.
Looking out on the bay. It's really cool. And then he goes up to Al. He's like, Al, I'm not really supposed to do this. He's like, well, I didn't even check. I just kind of thought. He's like, Al, what am I supposed to do here? And then it cuts to his partner, who you've seen off and on throughout the episode. And he's sitting in a bar with, this drug dealer. And this drug dealer brings out this little girl. And then his partner starts having flashbacks with the little girl, and he's sweating and crying. And I think it's his daughter, actually, but he starts having flashbacks, and they're going to kill him. And then Sam busts through the door with a shotgun on his hip and just bah, 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 just kills 3 guys.
Damn.
It's whoa. This show got real.
Yeah. Shit.
He kills those guys, and then he's like, okay, I think I'm good. And then he leaps, and then he's off to his next adventure. In the last episode, spoilers, by the way, he actually meets the person who's controlling it. It's assumed to be God. It's never directly said. That's telling him he's doing good work, because the room he's in is full of people who he's helped out, and in the mirror he can actually see his own face for the first time. And one of the things that it says is that his hair had gone gray.
Huh.
His hair hadn't actually gone gray. Scott Bakula has a white spot like I do.
Huh.
And when they brushed his hair in that way, that you could see this big white streak right up at the front. I was like, yeah, white spot. And so God tells him, you can go home, or you can keep helping people like this. You've done amazing things, and you can either go home or you can keep doing it. And so he just keeps sleeping. Yeah. It's the last little text that pops up in the last episode is Sam Beckett never returns home.
Wow.
And I remember at that panel with Scott Bakula, he was saying his son watched it, and he was like, that's it? I was like, well, yeah. I go off and I'm still doing good. I was like, yeah, that's it? You never go home?
It just tickles me that he's like, that's it?
I didn't come this far to watch you not go home. But it's a really good show. It's like classic 80s, like schmaltz. There's an episode where he goes back to the 1950s. And the whole detective novel, like, it's a good, fun show. And it actually tackles it tackles like gay issues and racism and treatment of the mentally handicapped, stuff like that.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's a good, fun show that used its powers for good. That's always nice.
That is good.
But that is it for us this week. 5-minute warnings going off. Pete, just to wrap us up, our 3 questions we ask every single episode. What do you love about questionable content?
I love how easy it is to, like, really get invested in the stories. Like, the story arcs aren't just like, oh, let's just follow around these characters for a day. It's like a actual serious storyline or centered around a serious issue. And you really want to see, like, you can kind of think about where it's going to end up, but you really want to see how it gets resolved.
Yeah.
And
you ever have one of those where you know exactly how it's going to end, like, first 2 pages, and then the arc just keeps going on for, like, a month?
Yeah, but luckily questionable content doesn't really do that. There's actually one arc that completely took me by surprise. I was like, oh my god, I did not see that coming at all. And, like, it just threw loop after loop at you, and it was great.
Nice. I was actually, it was some webcomic I was reading. It was really good. I can't remember the name of it now. But it did that, where it was like, based on the title of the arc and what happened the first couple pages, I was like, okay, so this happens and these 2 characters end up sleeping together. And that was 4 months.
Yeah.
Because it updated once a week. And I was like, I'm not going to waste my time reading this. Like, there's no reason to. Because the character progression was so just slow that I just, after a while, I was like, this is not worth my investment. I'm done. Speaking about things that you hate, that we hate about webcomics. Pete, what do you hate about questionable content?
It would have to be the transition between arcs. Because it's never, like, usually, like, among all the little arcs, there's, like, a larger story being told, and you really want to, like, keep learning about that story, but then it changes to a different arc centered around different characters, and although that arc ends up getting, like, really good, you're still stuck there in the transition for, like, the first 2 comics, and you're like, ah!
Yep. And who is questionable content a good fit for?
Let's see. Anybody who feels underrepresented in, like, media or fiction, things like that. Like, if you're not, say, gender binary, or if you're not, if you're not especially, like, typical of a sexual preference, like, say you're asexual, or maybe you're bi, or whatever it might be, it's a good fit if you're different in some way, which I can honestly say, like, 99% of us are in some way. And so it's a good way to see that, like, you know, maybe you're not alone the way you feel. So, yeah.
Good stuff.
So, Bart, what's some...
Did you forget you have to lead off the next one?
A little bit. Sorry. What's your favorite thing about Quantum Leap?
I love that it's, like, quick episodic things. Like, you don't really have to catch a specific season, or, like, there's no continuing storylines. It's like, this episode is this episode and this episode alone. Except for, like, the last one and, like, a few of the ones in the first season that are, like, him trying to remember stuff. But I love that you can just jump in at any point, and it's a Quantum Leap episode. Like, just go have fun.
Nice. So what's one thing you hate about it?
I do not like that first episode. Because there's a bunch. They tried to make it really sciencey and weird, and because it ends up with him waking up being like, "Why isn't it my own face in the mirror?" Like, "Ow, why can't I touch you?" And he's like, "No, it's okay." And there's a bunch of like helicopter shots with like reverse colors for dreams. It's weird. Ugh. It's one of those. Really, all you need to know of that show is just that opening like crawl.
All right. So what? Who is Quantum Leap a good fit for?
Pretty much people of my time. Like, if you didn't actually watch it when it was on television, I don't think there's really a reason to go back and watch it. But it's just this nice little, like, series that if you needed something in the background, like, just for noise, like, it'd be fun. It's good to watch. If you're looking to find something to watch for your mom, put it on. It's fun. It's Quantum Leap. But, yeah, I mean, I don't think that's fit for anybody now. I think if you watched it at the time, it has special meaning. It's not like Twin Peaks where it's kind of weird, but it's always there. It was very of its moment, even though it was of many moments because time travel and all that.
Nice.
But yeah, I still love it. It's a great show.
All right. Well, I guess that basically wraps up this episode, and we're actually like on time. Which is great.
Move.
All right. So thanks for listening, everyone. Thank you, OK Go, for the use of their song Here It Goes Again off the album Oh No. You know them. You don't know us. You can catch me on Twitter at PeterKennyArt.
And you can catch me on Twitter at BPaleComic. I was hoping you would read mine. I was hoping.
Okay.
Pete, what you doing next week?
It's still a little up in the air. Might do Rick and Morty. But we'll see. What's
your challenger for Rick and Morty?
What's a what?
What's the challenger for Rick and Morty? Like, I can't think of a R series that you like that you like as much as Rick and Morty. It's been your cell phone ringtone for like 2 years.
Yeah, that's true, huh? It's weird.
Like, I don't think you have a challenger. I am doing Ready Player One, the absolutely fantastic book by Ernest Cline.
Love that book.
And I snagged it before Pete snagged it, so he can't do it.
Bastard.
If you talk in like next week's episode, if you talk more in that first half than I do, I'm going to cut your audio. I want you to know that.
Okay.
This is my subject, and even though you've listened to the audio book about 1,000 times, and I've only read the book twice, I've read it more recently.
All right. So with that threat,
with that domestic dispute, thanks for listening, folks.
And remember to buy Spotch.
Bye, Spotch.